Hello, ladies and gentlemen of On the Line. Today we have one of my favorite Calgarians of all time, Paul Hughes. Paul and I go way back. He is someone who's been an activist here in Calgary for many, many years, and a couple of years ago he decided to pick up stakes and go to Ukraine to serve as a humanitarian and just an all-around crazy Canadian who could help out where he could. He is coming to me today from Kharkiv. He is talking in a cold, dark apartment, and as you will hear over the course of our conversation, bombs are still flying all around him. Do check it out. He's a fascinating guy, and it's a fascinating talk. That's today on The Line. Joining me on the line, we have Paul Hughes. Paul, you and I have known each other for a long time now, eh?
Yeah, 2011, I think.
2011, when you were still in Calgary. 14 years, exactly. 2011, when you were still in Calgary. And now you're in Ukraine.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Jen.
Can you tell our audience exactly where you're located and what your conditions are right now?
I'm in Kharkiv, and we're using flashlights and USB lights right now. No power, no heat. Kharkiv is in eastern Ukraine.
So you're right in the thick of it. How long have you been there now?
I've been in Ukraine since March 1st, 2022, and I've been in Kharkiv for three and a half years. So almost 4 years in Ukraine, 3.5 years in Kharkiv, which is 30 kilometers from the Russian-Ukrainian border.
Okay. I want to get into what's happening right now, because of course I know there's been activity on the war front where you are. But first, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what takes a person from Calgary to Kharkiv. I mean, so that people may be aware. I mean, I remember you when you were involved in sustainable food initiatives here in Calgary. You were growing community gardens, doing stuff like that. And really, really neat stuff, oddball stuff. And the war in Ukraine happens and you felt the call to go. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, a bit oddball back in the day, but I remember when COVID kicked in, a whole bunch of people were like, "Well, you're not so crazy after all." I was doing a lot of community focused work, homelessness and food security in Calgary. And when the war started, well, the invasion, because this war has been going on for quite a while, but when the invasion started and I saw what the world saw, it was just a seed was planted. I was doing Grow Calgary, so I think, a seed was planted, and I started to feel like I should go to this country, Ukraine, which I knew so little about because of, the sovereignty, the freedom issue. They're being attacked by a much larger country, much larger army. And it just felt like a bully type situation. And I've never been really good with the bully scene. And also I served in the Canadian military as well during the 80s, during the I call it the cold beer war, because we didn't do much more than drink beer when I was in Germany. But during the Cold War, and the Russians and the Soviets and the Ukrainians at the time were the enemy. Thankfully, nothing happened and nothing escalated because it was there's a lot of tension around nuclear proliferation and thermonuclear warfare and limited nuclear warfare and just the threat in the European theater and globally was nuclear war. So, and then also I'm a Canadian, and I don't really like Russians because of the hockey history too as well. So anyway, there's just a whole bunch of things, but on a very serious note, I couldn't believe what my eyes were seeing online, about this country being attacked after they said, "No, we're not going to attack you." And then literally as they're saying that, they're attacking Ukraine. So a seed was planted about coming over here.
And did you have any ties to Ukraine, family ties, history, anything like that?
No, I have none whatsoever. I mean, I went to school in Saskatchewan with some Ukrainian kids, and I painted my fair share of Easter eggs, which is, Pysankas, I think it's called here. had some borscht, but no real Ukrainian roots. Mac and I have zero Ukrainian blood. But you don't need to be Ukrainian to help a sovereign country deal with freedom and the issue about being bullied by a much larger army. So, but yeah, no Ukrainian connection prior to this at all.
Can you tell me about Mac? Mac's your son. He came over with you, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Well, he came over a little bit after I came over. Mac came over, and he was a humanitarian. He and I did hundreds of missions together, and then he decided that he wanted to do more. You meet quite a few people here in the humanitarian world, and there's a lot of crossover with the military, especially with the International Legion. So Mac had met some guys, and one gentleman, young man in particular, Mac bonded with, and he was killed, and it really changed Mac. He wanted to do more, and he decided he was going to join the military. So he got involved in the military. But yeah, Mackenzie's my son. So
Mac is there now in a military capacity. So he's fighting. Do you know where he's fighting now? Or he was injured quite seriously, I believe.
He was injured very, very seriously. He was hit by a Shahed drone on Canada Day down in near a city called Zaporizhia. So he's in physio. He's rehabilitating right now. He's still in the military.
He's still in the military. Is he fighting at all, or is he still in the physical recovery side?
Well, he's fighting to get better from his injuries. But he's not presently fighting. But this is sorry, I don't want to cut it too fine here, but you're always kind of fighting in Ukraine.
Yeah.
There's just so much going on here. But no, he's not formally fighting at the moment.
Okay. And when you came over initially from Calgary, was it your hope to join the military or to be a fighter? Or did you have plans to join on the humanitarian side?
Yeah, I think when I came over here, I wasn't thinking humanitarian at all. I was thinking military. My blood was boiling, just from what I saw. Like so many people, it was just, here we are in 2022 and we, 21st century. And, we think that we're, you don't attack sovereign countries. And, my blood was boiling. I was quite motivated to come over and join the military because of my military background. That didn't really pan out. There was a call by President Zelensky at the time for foreign fighters or foreigners to come and help with the military, especially if they had military experience like myself. I was in the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. So I have pretty good military training and background. But when I came here, it wasn't really completely fleshed out, if I can put it that way. So it was a little bit of confusion because it was quite early, and I was one of the first guys to show up. So it was a little bit too early. But when I did get to Lviv, March 4th, I went to the train station in Lviv, and what I saw was it was just a sea of humanity. For me, I sometimes say it made Woodstock look like a backyard party. It was just absolutely, I've never seen experience anything like I experienced more misery. I saw more insanity, and I do a lot of work with homeless people and really bad situations back in Canada. But in 10 minutes, I was completely overwhelmed. Everything I had just to hold it together. And I just couldn't believe the people that I saw and how they were holding it together under just immense pressure and trauma, like through the roof. People that have been traveling for days and days to get away from the invasion, to escape the invasion. It was very, very abrupt. It was very quick. Thankfully, it got stalled in many places, but people were they grabbed bags and left because the Russians were coming. And that's all they had. And children with nothing, no toys, it was just a sea of humanity and suffering. And no food and a whole bunch of things. And then, the city of Lviv started to really rally, and I just happened to be there and watching some of this and trying to help people. And I was just, at first, I just got there and I immediately went, okay, well, obviously there's a humanitarian crisis going on here. So I was carrying bags and helping people and hugs and, just, I don't know what I was doing really, but I was trying to help. And I noticed somebody pull up in a van, and these people got out and they were trying to set up a table, and people were kind of starting to crowd around. Oh, they were setting up a table so they could serve food. The food didn't even get to the table. Like, they were trying to get it out of the van, and they were just basically, pounced on. The food was gone. They walked 3 feet and the food was gone. It was just being grabbed out of their hands. People hadn't eaten. There's no proper toilet facilities. There was no heat. It was very cold. I watched them as they were chopping down trees like downtown Calgary. You don't go and chop down trees in parks. Like, they were taking all the trees down just for firewood. And, it was crazy. It was a little bit. So, but then I started to realize, the people, and so I talked to these people in this van, and my background was food security, and I've done that. I've, tried to feed people, and I've taken food down to homeless population, and I've, those types of things. And so, we made a bit of a connection. I said, I've got a little bit of money. A sponsor in Canada gave me some money. Would this help? Yeah, we will. Okay, we'll do this, and we'll come with us. And I'm like, okay. So we went and bought food right away, and we went back. And we went back, and it was about the third time that we were finally able to get a table set up and, do it properly. But it was just really overwhelming. Then we got the kitchen going. We got our hands on a whole bunch of equipment, and we started doing these huge pots of soup, borshy, soupy kind of thing. It's just, they're huge. The pots are like just half the size of a car. Mm-hmm. And so, and then getting all the firewood. I was chopping firewood and getting it going and buying the food, and we were feeding lots of people, and it was very successful, because the one morning I went there to check on the kitchen that I had got going with these other guys, World Central Kitchen had come and rebranded everything, taken it over, and they'd shown up with all kinds of money, and World Central Kitchen's very powerful and very effective organization. So, so that was testament to, the very first thing I did was pretty successful, because World Central Kitchen took it over. So it was really good. But it was very intense, very, very intense. Every moment, the first month went by like it felt like a couple of days, and I realized I'd already been there a month, because I was getting 2-3 hours sleep a night, and it was just unrelenting, and everything that was going on there it was really crazy, really crazy.
So, did you get hooked into the humanitarian networks as a result of that first experience there?
Well, I was. There wasn't really humanitarian networks per se, like well-established networks. They were being created, like they're building the plane as it's taking off, kind of thing. Right. And there was a civil society here, of course. There's a civil society here, but this just changed everything. They didn't have the sea of humanity. It was like half the population of Calgary leaving and showing up in Red Deer. And Red Deer's going, what's going on? Where are all these people coming from? And anyway, it was intense. It was very, very intense. But we did tap into other humanitarians and other people that wanted to help, not really knowing that we were humanitarians, just helping. And so, I was one of the early people. And so there was a lot of, people coming to help and independent. And I was independent. I was just a person. I was just one guy coming to help. I had some support from Canada, thankfully. And thank you to all those people, by the way.
And this is just support that random people were like, I know you did some fundraising stuff, but this is just support from people and random people in Canada,
right
not government support.
I had 24 hours from the time I was going to go, and this gentleman contacted me and said he was going to buy me a ticket and asked me when I want to go. And I said, no time like the present. I had 24 hours. I didn't say goodbye to anybody. People were actually a little bit mad at me. Like, why didn't you say goodbye? Well, I'd be saying goodbye to hundreds of people. And so I just said, Mac, we just got to pack, and I got to go, and I just got to go. And, if I'm going to do this, I got to go do this. So, but these people got a hold of me, and people like Donna Clark and my son, really, really stepped up, and we got the Hugs organization going. So we were one of the first independent humanitarian organizations. The Red Cross was not responding. the United Nations, they cannot spin on a dime. They cannot pivot that quickly.
Right.
And their rollout, I mean, we were up and going as just a bunch of citizens much quicker than the Red Cross or any of these other organizations. They showed up later.
Right.
And so there was an influx of foreign humanitarians coming to work, coming to help, volunteer. And everybody just started to do their thing. And from that, a network developed.
Right.
From that, we had our first WhatsApp group. And then all of a sudden there's a WhatsApp group for this. And then there's a Signal group, and there's a Viber group, and there's a Telegram group. And, it was just, everything was going on, and it was just, people were crossing paths, and it was just utter chaos. It makes everything I did in Calgary look very, very sane, very, very methodical, and it wasn't. I tell you that. I was winging it, like any good activist, and So, but I mean, it was just really good people trying the best that they could to help really good people.
This message is brought to you by the Forest Products Association of Canada. In a volatile world, Canada has to focus on what we can control right here at home. Prime Minister Carney says a country that can't build itself has few options. The forest products sector provides the literal building blocks for our country, from the lumber and wood products to build new homes and infrastructure, to pulp and paper for household and business use, to the renewable power we need to support energy security. We're already a global trade success story, and we're ready to do more to build a resilient, self-reliant country. It's time to focus on Canada's domestic strengths. Learn more at fpac.ca.
So I was just going to point out, Paul, that, leaving a comfortable life in Calgary, dropping everything, going to a war zone, especially a war zone that everyone is claiming is going to be imminently defeated by the Russians, and helping just because you got pissed off at the Russians for being bullies, that's pretty next level. That is not normal personality. That's kind of crazy in the best possible way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never aspired to be normal. That's for sure. And I don't really think I did anything too normal when I was back in Calgary. I tried to avoid that a little bit, and I tried to stand up for people that didn't have a voice. And, that's something that was instilled in me by my father, my mother, to stand up for the little people. My dad had a strong Tommy Douglas influence. And so, it was, when the gentleman called me and asked me if I was going to go, if I wanted to go, or when I wanted to go. And I said, no time like the present. I almost, as soon as those words came out of my mouth, I almost kind of regretted it. Like I was like, oh, what have I done? And he was like, okay. And then he hang up right away. Okay, I'll get right back to you. And he went and booked the ticket for 24 hours later. But, no, it's been, quite an experience. And I think that at different times in people's lives, we have something, a calling or something that happens that you really feel strongly about doing. And, when I came over here, I didn't think I was going to be here 4 years later. I didn't think my son would be here. I didn't think my son would be hit by Shahed. I didn't think I'd be captured by Russians. I didn't think, of the thousands of things that have happened to me here, I didn't think any of this was going to happen. I really didn't know what I was doing over here, Jen. I didn't know what I was going to do exactly. But, I can say that, we have, our organization, myself and my son and the people that we work with, we've helped Ukraine. We've helped a lot of Ukrainians. We've helped thousands and thousands and thousands of people.
So I want to go back just a second. You got captured by Russians?
Yeah.
What happened? This I didn't know.
There's a documentary, a radio documentary that was done by a buddy of mine I served with during the Cold Beer War in Germany, Dan Kerslake. He's a reporter with CBC in Saskatoon, and he did a whole radio documentary. We called it Mission 300, and it was about the 300th mission that Mac and I had done here in Ukraine and also talked a little bit about what happened when I got captured by the Russians when I went to evacuate a young girl, 6-year-old girl. I got a call from a Dutch agency to go down there, and they said, "Are you the crazy Canadian that goes down and evacuates people?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, well, yeah. Well, we've got a 6-year-old girl down by Zaporizhia that needs to be evacuated to her mother who's waiting for her in Holland, and they can't seem to get her out." And I didn't quite understand some of the nuances of that. And I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll do it." And it turns out that she was actually on the Russian side, Russian occupied territory. That's an acronym is ROT, R-O-T, Russian occupied territory. Is very appropriate for them. So everything is rotten down there. But I went down there and I was very naive, thinking that, I'm a Canadian and I've got a big Canadian flag on my van, and, the Russians they're going to let me go and no, big wake up call. I'm a very lucky person. I probably shouldn't be alive right now. And,
but how did the girl wind up there alone without her mother?
She was with her father.
Okay.
Her mother had left.
Okay.
And she was with her dad, and, her dad, for some reason, decided he was going to stay when everybody else was getting out of the Russian territory with his daughter. I don't know the history exactly, but managed to get her reunited. Anyway, it was, Jen, it's a really long story. Very, 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 very involved. And, we could potentially get into it, but it's quite involved.
Okay. You know what? If the Mission 300 is already out there, then I will leave it to our readers. I'll find a link to the documentary, and maybe our listeners can listen to it directly.
And Bill Kaufman did a piece too as well.
Okay. I was not familiar with this story, so thanks for flagging it for me.
It's pretty interesting. I'm probably considered to be the luckiest humanitarian in Ukraine. And there's lots of us. But most people that get captured they're in prison, and they're part of a swap, or they're just killed, like, some people that we know, like Chris Perry.
Right.
And, a bunch of people that just kill. So, I was pretty naive. When I did what I did, I had this, I've been treated so well with so many people up until then. I mean, there's a lot of really challenging situations and very dangerous situations I've been in, but I don't know what I was thinking, but never, ever doing that again. I highly advise against that.
So why did you choose to stay in Ukraine after that experience?
Why did I stay?
Yeah.
Well,
you're not in Kyiv here. You're in a dangerous district in Ukraine right now, as we speak.
Yeah. We can hear artillery on a quiet night. Most nights are quiet. I'll talk to you about that a little bit, but there's so many people in harm's way here. So many people. This is just the strangest situation that you can imagine. It's just so odd. I decided to stay because I'm kind of that way. Once I start something, I want to finish it, and once I'm committed to something, I'm gonna do it. I think a lot of that comes from being a hockey coach. You start your season off in September, and you got to go till March, April, May with the kids and your players and your athletes. And I remember one team I started, the very first game, we lost 10-0. I'm like, this is going to be a long season. A lot of people would go, "Oh yeah, I'm out of here. I want nothing to do with this." But in hockey, you got to keep going, and in life, you got to keep going. And I have my son. We've had he and I have had our fair share of challenges, and you just got to keep going. My parents instilled that in me, and that's just the way we are as Canadians as well. I have a Canadian flag on my van, on the van that I in the vehicle, and things like I'm also representing my country, and I just can't quit. I can't quit. When you represent your country, you just can't quit. Which some people back in Canada want to quit Canada. Well, you don't quit Canada. I mean, it doesn't work that way, you guys. So yeah, I just we wanted to finish. We wanted to finish what we started here. I had no intention ever of leaving this country after that first month. I was just like, these people are crazy brave, crazy bold, amazing people. Their spirit, their heart, the things that we take for granted and we whine about back in Canada, things that I thought were important in Canada. Holy smokes, was I wrong? Go from a G7 country to a G70 country and get seriously involved in that country. And there happened to be a war too. It just changes your perspective entirely. A firefighter, you ask her when she's going to go home, and she's going to say, well, when the fire's out, I'll go home. So when the fire's out here, then I think, I'll consider going home. Mac and I will consider going home long term. So, but right now it's the fire is raging, and it's we just went through a very serious cold spell. We're right on the end of it. We don't know what's going to happen in the next. I think we got a little bit of a reprieve over the next 4 or 5 days. We don't know what's going to happen, but it was very, very challenging with people not having access to power and heat, and dipping down to minus 25. Very dangerous, very deadly temperatures. In energy infrastructure being attacked. It's one thing to have a storm and a tree falls on a power line or something like that. And it's another thing to have that entire generation plant destroyed by multiple missile strikes. That's a whole different, like, you have to rebuild from scratch. So, the Ukrainians have their hands full with attacks on energy infrastructure. And along with that, of course, anybody's had power go out and the heat go out in the wintertime know that the water lines can freeze, and there's just a lot of escalating type problems, and they go along with that. So
we hear a lot of people here, in especially from the right-wing section on American politics, talk about how this war needs to end and a peace settlement needs to happen. Fighting just needs to end, peace at any cost kind of energy to it. Can you tell us how you respond to hearing that kind of rhetoric and logic?
Well, I agree. I mean, this war needs to end. Every war needs to end, and I agree 100% with anybody who wants this war to end. It's how this war is going to end. This is where the nuances, and this is where the subtleties of what's going on here, and understanding a truly deep understanding of the geopolitics of this situation. And I'm not a professor or anything like that, but I've living here for 4 years, and I understand it now. I mean, every day I talk with people that we help and their relationship with their neighbor Russia. It's not a good relationship, and so yes, the war needs to end. But at the same time, peace at any cost. That's worse than war, if you ask me. Within the context of Russia and Ukraine, to just appease Putin, to appease Trump, is going to put Ukraine in a much more difficult and dangerous situation than trying to actually negotiate a lasting and what they call a just and lasting peace. Putin, the common. The one thing that the Ukrainians are they're not, they have no illusions about Putin and Russia. They are not to be trusted. One of the sayings here is never trust the Russian. And and there's a reason for that. 800 years or something of a relationship. Everything that's happened in the past history with between Russia and Ukraine, Russia basically trying to wipe out Ukrainian culture, stealing it, and then trying to wipe it out. So co-opting it, and then things like trying to starve Ukrainians, trying to destroy their language, ensuring that all Ukrainians speak Russian and stop speaking Ukrainian. And this has been going on for hundreds of years. It's a deep, deep history. It's a bitter, bitter relationship, and there's some really bad blood. But to just give up, say, the Donbass and give Putin territory, and just, why don't you just do that because people are going to die? Well, people have died. I mean, Ukraine's standing up to a tyrant. And, we never teach our children this. Like, you don't go into, on the playground and let somebody just go like pure havoc and just beat everybody up and steal their lunch money or do whatever they want constantly, consistently. Somebody eventually has to stand up to those people and to that individual. And that's what Ukraine's doing. And Ukraine really, really needs the support of the Western world, Canadians and the Americans, NATO. But it really hasn't been there in anything that's substantive. And so we have a prolonged war. So this whole idea that keeps coming up about, this is Biden's war. Yeah, maybe it was Biden's war up until, you took office. But while you were campaigning, while Trump was campaigning, he consistently said, I'm going to end this war in a day. In fact, before the inauguration, I'm going to end this war. He lied to the American people. That 1 day promise is now in its second year. He absolutely refuses to play tough. I mean, this is so un-American. You want to see un-American is what Trump's doing. Americans are tough. When they say, okay, this is the line, that's the line, and you listen, because they can back it up. Trump has that massive military might, but he will not draw a line, and he will not back it up, and he will not enforce it. And this is really aggravating for somebody like myself and every Ukrainian over here who they do want the war to end. Nobody wants the war to end more than Ukraine. They're getting their asses kicked bad. Not in that sense, but the civilian population and what we just went through. They're getting the shit kicked out of them here. And so they don't want to lose any more people. Ukraine's lost so many good people. Something like almost 800 athletes have been involved in the war, injured or killed in the war. They're athletes, their Olympic team, Olympians, their best doctors, their best teachers, their best, all these different people who are patriots stepped up and got involved in the war. They've lost these people who are absolutely the fabric of their society. They've lost some of the best people they have. They don't want this war anymore. Everybody I talk to here, nobody wants the war anymore, but they're not willing to just give it up and stop the war at any price. And they understand that something substantive has to be negotiated. And until then, they're going to hold their ground and they're going to defend their country. They're going to defend democracy, which they've fought very hard for. So when I hear people back in Canada talking about freedom and democracy, I have a much different perspective now. I used to take it a little bit, for granted. Not anymore. These people are actually, blood is being spilt for their freedom. Blood is being spilt to maintain their democracy and keep their democracy. So this is not a game. When my son was in the hospital, I would go to these military hospitals, and there'd be 200 guys. Well, 200 guys means what? Two arms for 200 guys. That's 400 arms. 2 legs for 200 guys. That's 400. No. There's 156 legs and there's 73 arms. These people, it's just, and this is just one of thousands of military hospitals. They have paid a massive price to maintain their democracy and keep their country. If Russia was just to leave, like just turn around, pack their bags and go, if they want peace, this war would be over. If Ukraine puts down their weapons and stops, then Ukraine is done. The country of Ukraine will cease to exist. And
one thing I do want to bring up, although I don't want to talk too much about it because I find it very difficult to even discuss, is the children who have been kidnapped out of Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Predictions of tens of thousands of Ukrainian children kidnapped and taken into Russian territory as a result of this war. The idea that you could just appease these people or find a non-just answer or a non-just peace after they've stolen your children is pretty unconscionable to me.
Well, as a mother and I'm a father, and it's absolutely horrific that they do this. Not just that they do this, but they get away with it. And the UN and the Red Cross and Trump and whoever else and NATO watching and seeing these types of atrocities happen. There are people working really hard to save these children. But it's horrible. I mean, the war crimes that are being committed here are, like, they're war crimes. They kill soldiers that they capture.
I want to talk about your specific situation in Kharkiv right now, and that looks like that's going to become applicable. But first, I just want to talk for a moment about Canada, because, of course, you're in a really interesting situation. You're in Ukraine. You've seen firsthand now what war looks like. You've seen firsthand what it means to have a larger power try to invade a smaller power. Now, I want to be clear here. I don't think that America is going to be rolling the tanks over the border and annexing Alberta. I don't think I don't think we're looking at a totally comparable situation. But are there parallels between what you've seen in the politics of Ukraine and what we're seeing play out in Alberta right now?
Yeah, 100%. That's how it's.
What are you seeing?
That's exactly how it started here.
Tell me how it started.
Well, when I first came here, I didn't know too much about Ukrainian history.
Yeah.
I didn't even know there was a city called Kharkiv, and I'm living in it now, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I've been educated by so many Ukrainians now, and the Donbass and the Russian-backed separatist movement, people who started with language, and it started with being disgruntled with Kyiv, and some seeds were planted and fires were fanned, and and this, Russia's very, very good at this propaganda war. The Americans are pretty good at it too. And so, but it started with, people basically wanting more and more attention, but also not really taking the line of discussing it like in a democracy and trying to find a democratic solution. They decided to pick up arms. And that's a fine line from, being a Democrat and then all of a sudden being a combatant and being a patriot that's picking up a weapon. And there's a lot of people tiptoeing around that right now. And there's a lot of rhetoric right now around that too. And about the 51st state and Alberta separatism, and the governor comments. And then, Canada's potentially preparing for an invasion. The first time our military's ever really discussed that kind of concept, I think, at least openly. And so we're right on the kind of cusp. There's a lot of similarities from those early days about how that initial conflict, which most of the world kind of ignored. Yeah, they took Crimea. Nobody really understood Crimea because they were saying Crimea and Donbass, and nobody knows, our global politics. From many people, very narrow-minded that way and very shallow, including myself, quite frankly. But that's kind of how it started. It was small numbers, but it just it was backed by the Russians. So weapons were coming in, support was coming in from the Russians, and fueling that whole separatist movement so that they were able to put up a bit of a fight. And I would that would be the worst case scenario for Canada. But some of the people that I'm also very patriotic, and I love my country, and I'm willing to do pretty well anything to defend my country. And then when I have former neighbors back in Alberta, talking about wanting to separate, and they're quite adamant about it as well. You got a lot of push comes to shove kind of scenarios going on. And thankfully, up till now, things have been fairly civil, I guess. But the things I'm hearing and some of the stuff online is just so hate-filled and so hate-driven. Just hate Canada. Well, you don't hate Canada. You don't hate Canada. You don't like the government, or you don't like somebody who's running the government. You don't like the prime minister, or you don't like a premier. You don't like something like that. You don't like certain policies, but you don't hate Canada. But the way that it's been the narrative and the way people are presenting is that they hate Canada. They want to get away from Canada. There's nothing wrong with Canada. Canada is not to be touched. Canada is just leave Canada alone. Deal with the issues. So there's a lot of confusion on that side. I mean, the things that I read and the people that I talk to, and I do talk to separatists, and we do have some pretty heated discussions, but there's confusion, and so it's misplaced. And certainly, if they have a grievance, then there's a way to do that, and we have a mechanism for doing that. And I remember one person saying, "Well, we'll never elect a conservative government again." Well, you almost did. Like literally a year ago, you were gonna. I don't know what the polls were, but I was looking at like 20% difference, and like I think the Conservatives were going to have a majority government. I mean, I wasn't completely in touch with it, but and then Trump started saying some things about 51st state and governor, and it just got Canadians' backs up, and we also that wasn't and that wasn't an option anymore, and it wasn't all of a sudden we elected a Liberal government again. But they were well on their way to having a Conservative government. So there has to be a political resolution, and it cannot go the way of Donbass. It cannot go the way of what's happening with the Ukrainians and the Russians. But that's essentially kind of how it started. It's much more nuanced and deeply rooted than I'm saying. I'm not giving it the proper background information that it deserves, but essentially that's how these things start. So
I just wanted to make sure not to be accused of being alarmist here. I think that the Alberta separation movement is many, many, many steps removed from what we're seeing now in Ukraine. A lot of things would need to go very, very badly pear-shaped for a very long time before we ever got into this kind of a situation.
Yeah,
what I think is worth noting, however, is that a lot of the conflicts between Ukraine and Russia sort of began in 2014 with sort of similar stuff to the stuff we're seeing in Alberta. It started with, disinformation. It started with sowing resentment against Kyiv. It started with foreign interference into propaganda networks, those sorts of things, and eventually weapons being shipped over the border. I want to be really clear. I'm not seeing evidence that the Americans are shipping weapons over the border, and even the degree to which Americans are influencing the Alberta separatism movement. I mean, there is some influence there, but I think what we're seeing here is mostly, for the most part, a pretty grassroots Alberta movement. Paul, I mean, you've been here in Alberta for as long as I have, longer still. I mean, there's always been a nascent separatism movement here. Why it's taking off now, I think, is a response to what's happening in the United States. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't want to be alarmist. Of course. I mean, this is like, I'll state it quite clearly. This is a worst case scenario. But we're in a very, very strange time. People are not making the decisions that we used to. Like, I mean, I think Prime Minister Carney was very clear. Like, we're living in a different world now. This is not the world that we want to live in anymore. We have to accept that. Decisions are, I don't have that complete level of confidence. We got some pretty wound up people right now that are very, very adamant about what they believe in. And, those numbers started quite small. And I mean, of course, the situation in Ukraine is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old. And the situation in Alberta is not just recent, as you just mentioned. I mean, this has been going on for a long time. I think when I first moved to Alberta in early 80s, I think there was Alberta separatists and people didn't like Ottawa. And I remember a drive. I can't remember if it's going down towards Crow's Nest Pass or not, but there was a guy that always on the road, maybe it was on Highway 2, I can't recall, but he had a Western separatist on the side of a semi-trailer, and they'd been there forever. And there are people that are disgruntled for sure. But and it's the same thing as any, like, I mean, I've been to a lot of protests and demonstrations, and there's a very peaceful component for the most part. But it just takes a few guys to decide that they're going to throw a brick through a window or flip a car or do something. And all of a sudden you've got chaos, or a policeman's going to start doing something, beyond what the peace, they're going to start to enforce something. Somebody's going to push somebody. And we have a very wound up society right now. So I just want to say you're observing from afar with your contacts back in Alberta, something that I'm also observing. And that is the rhetoric and the level of logic has become increasingly alarming and deranged.
Is that safe to say?
Very inflammatory. Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. I mean, I was involved in politics. You've been involved in politics. We've been, we've seen some fairly interesting arguments and discussions about some things that people are very, very passionate about. But the level, the discourse, the how insanely rude, and I have been rude. Like, I know I'm also being rude. I'm like, you fucking traitors, and like, wow, this is very, and I'm saying this to another Canadian, like, this is sedition, and like, what? Now I'm involved in it now, and this is how these things kind of escalate, and so, yeah, it's horrible. It's a horrible situation, and people are, the facts are just loose. We're playing very fast and loose with facts now. And anything, and also the manipulation of a situation and perspectives, and some things that look, wow, that's pretty black and white. No, there's a bazillion different shades of all those colors, and everybody has a different angle on it. And people will say things that you just like, hey, are we watching the same thing? Are we seeing the same thing? Did we hear the same thing? Do you not understand that? Part of it comes from I see a lot of sort of newbies to the political scene, if you will. People have just been fairly quiet, and all of a sudden they just, I think, they snap. They're starting to snap. But they haven't really, and on both sides, on all sides, of course, there's some people who have some experience in these types of things and know where there's that line and what the consequences are crossing those lines. We got a lot of people involved that don't know what offside is in politics right now. And so, we're in a very, very, volatile situation in Alberta right now. It just feels and reminds me a little bit about what I've been hearing and what I've seen here, some parts of it. And the reason why I'm even saying that is it's more of a warning. It's more of a harbinger. It's like, please, Alberta, please, Canada, let's please be good to one another. Yes, we disagree. Let's try to be respectful. Let's try to have those conversations that need to happen. Let's get to the table and let's start making decisions, and let's follow through on those decisions. We have clear issues. We have clear solutions. Now we need to act. And but going down that other path, it just takes, it's, I don't know who the first person that shot somebody or did something in Donbass and the separatist movement here. I don't know what it was exactly. I'll find out more about it, but something happened. And up until a certain point, everything was fine. And then something happened, Crimea happened. And so it might even be out of Alberta's hands as well. So there's a lot of speculation for sure. And, we just watched, and don't say it wouldn't happen. And we just watched Trump invade Venezuela. He's got a very, very powerful military. He thinks he might be the savior of the people in Alberta, and every day he gets up, we get something new. It's a whole new menu every day. So,
well, I want to bring this back to your personal situation here, because you're in Kharkiv, obviously. You're cold. Your apartment hasn't had heat in some time.
Can you see my breath? Can you see my breath?
I can't see your breath, but I believe that I can tell just by looking at you that you're cold. I believe that the Russians have renewed their assaults against civilian targets in the area that you're in. Can you give us sort of a picture, a view of what you're experiencing right now?
Tremendous misery and hardship. It's very, very difficult for the older population. It's very, very difficult for anybody who's vulnerable here. Anybody who's lower income, they're really, really struggling here. Not having heat, not having power, not having water. It's intermittent. In the case of the heat, this is not coming back. This isn't just a one-off little thing that happened. Their energy generation facilities have been destroyed, annihilated. There's pictures all over the internet of some of these places. Multiple times they've been hit. So on the street, it's starting. 4 years of this. It's not 4 weeks of this war. It's not 4 months of this war. It's 4 years of this war. And it's really starting to have an impact on the social fabric. And but these people are incredibly strong. They're very, very brave. They're very resilient. But there's cracks, and there's lots of cracks. And there's lots of guys walking around without arms and legs. There's lots of people who have lost. Almost everybody in this country, I would say almost everybody in this country has been touched by this war in some way or another. They've lost somebody. Somebody's been injured. Somebody's been mobilized. Something's happened to them. Their lives. So many students. Kharkiv is a big university city, massive. Something like 50 post-secondary education institutions here. Some of them really big part of the local economy. They're all pretty well shut down. They're just starting to come back. It's only university students, but they had so many foreign students here, international students here. It was a big part of their economy. They're all gone. There's none of that here. The vibrancy of the city is gone. Jen, okay, I can go outside. You can go outside anytime in any city around the world around 8 o'clock in the wintertime when it's dark. And you look up, you're not going to see the stars. There's so much light pollution in every city in the world. Here you see the stars, and it's quiet. 10 o'clock at night, pitch black, and it's quiet. It's eerily quiet. No, go outside at Calgary at 10 o'clock downtown. I don't live far. I'm like in the downtown core, of Kharkiv, and no, you can hear the buzz of 17th Avenue and Crowchild and 14th and 10th and all these different. You can hear all this stuff. You can't see the stars. Here you can see the stars. It's quiet. Every apartment building's quiet. It's pitch black, total blackouts, darkness. So that's a siren right now.
You gotta go? Okay.
No, I don't have to go. It's just if I went every time there's a siren, I would just be spending my entire time in Ukraine in a bomb shelter. There's sirens sometimes every half an hour. So, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's now, it's so odd because it's now almost a lottery kind of thing, an odd. I mean, so many people just have resigned themselves to it because at first, yes, almost everybody was going to the shelter, and now people don't really go to the shelter anymore. Some people, a lot of families do, but unfortunately, a lot of people it's just too much. It's 4 years, it's not 4 weeks, not 4 months, it's 4 years, and it's just taken a massive toll. So people are so desensitized towards everything that's going on that our normal fear reaction, our normal life preservation instincts are really warped, very, very warped here now. So I never thought I'd be part of any kind of a social experiment that way, but I've definitely learned a lot about what people do. I've seen a whole different level of bravery and a whole different level of sacrifice, like to the nth degree. Like what, this one man we work with, and his early on in the war, he sent his 3 children and his wife. They left the country. They were here in Kharkiv, and they left for safety reasons at the beginning of the war, thinking, okay, it's going to be 2 or 3 weeks, a month. We'll see you soon, hon. He hasn't seen his kids or his wife in almost 4 years. Like this, and this is not a rare story. This is the standard here. This is common. Like so many families have been divided, and the long-term trauma here is unrivaled. I mean, this is like these numbers here, and how many millions of people have left their country, how many families have broken up, how many the fighting age men were not allowed to leave the country, but the women and children could, and which is at the beginning it's like every women and children, let's go get them to safety right away, but now we're in 4 years. The toll on this country, the toll on the people, is so immense. It's staggering. It's overwhelming. There's no way to actually give it any kind of qualitative measurement. It's just massive. It's just massive trauma. We have a SMART program where we work with kids. It's an acronym for sports, music, art, rec, and tech. And I came up with this idea after going to one of the IDP shelters, internally displaced persons shelters, because I have a background in coaching and things like that. And they didn't have any soccer balls, and they didn't have any board games, and there was no toys and no paint sets and no musical instruments or anything. And so I started this program called SMART. And these children, we do it because we know, and I'm not a clinician, but we know these children have been traumatized. Badly traumatized. Their schools have been blown up. They're from Kupiansk. They're from Bakhmut. They're from Avdiivka. They're from Konstantinivka. They're from Lipsy. They're from Volchansk. They're from Pokrovsk. They're from all these communities that have been blown to absolute smithereens. Like literally, you look at the images, these beautiful, beautiful little communities, and they're just flattened. That's what the Russians do. They just destroy them. So these children have lost. They don't have their dogs. They don't have their cats. They don't have their friends. They're separated. Their best buddy is somewhere, could be in Lviv, and 10 hours away from them. They don't even know. They're not even in contact. They've just had their worlds turned upside down. They're just children. They're just children. They're just kids. They're just kids. And I've been to so many schools near the front line that have been destroyed. Who destroys maternity wards? Who destroys hospitals? Who destroys schools? Who does this kind of thing? This is a whole different level. This isn't soldier on soldier. This is Russia versus civilian population of Ukraine, and it's just absolutely. So these, we're not clinicians, but we know these children have trauma. So we try to put a smile on their face, and the enormity of it, it just overwhelms me. And if I actually sit there and think about it and dwell on it, then it just tears you apart. You just can't. Right now, we can't afford to, unfortunately, right now, to really, you just got to keep going. And these people just got to keep going. But we work with these children, and there's sirens going off while we're playing outside. And these kids they keep playing. They're used to bombs. You can hear bombs, and they don't even flinch anymore. I've heard bombs where I'm like, whoa, what the? And there's other people, there's babusas, walking down the street, and there's kids, and then and they're pushing their babies in the carriage in the park, and that's just life. That's just life. And it isn't. This is no way to live at all. And this is a horrific war, Jen. It's absolutely horrific in that way. And if I wasn't here, this would just be a kind of a moot kind of conversation. But I'm here. The kinds of things I did in Canada. I'm seeing this firsthand. I've gone to these frontline communities, and it's this is just absolutely, it's despicable. It's horrific. It's the misery, the level of misery here, and very brave people. I'm just really, we all really want peace here. We really do, but. This is a massively complex situation that we're in right now, and it's borderline. It's genocidal in many ways. I've never been anywhere near anything genocide. We never, we have some homeless issues back in Calgary in Canada, but there's some problems there with some things, but nobody's using the G word. Nobody's just genocide. There's nobody going after Calgarians randomly, throwing bombs into the middle of Calgary. It doesn't matter. They're not actually targeted, Jen. These bombs are just being sent at a target. It's just Calgary. And if you can hit that Calgary, if you can hit anywhere in the northwest, the southwest, then you hit the target. It doesn't matter. They just want to hit the target. They just want to hit that big target, which is the definition of terrorism. These people are being terrorized. I'm being terrorized. Willingly, I guess, I'm here. I can leave. Okay, bye. I can't. The Russians took my passport, so I can't really leave. That's another story. But anyway, people are being terrorized. And I know what that feels like now. My son knows what it feels like. My friends here know what it feels like. The people have been living in Kharkiv since the day it started, and they rolled into town. They were almost at the center of the city at one point. And they're being terrorized. These people are being terrorized. And it's just I'm sorry this isn't a little more uplifting type interview, but that's the reality from here in Kharkiv.
But you know what, Paul? In some ways, I understand that your conditions are extremely awful, and some things you experience have been extremely awful. But the fact that you're there to bear witness and to try and be of help, that is uplifting. That is really, really uplifting. And it's an extraordinary thing to have you there. So thank you for making that sacrifice and being of service in that way.
Oh, thanks for saying that, Jen. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
And I hope that you will be back in Calgary soon, and then we can meet up again, because I want to touch base. So under better circumstances and better conditions.
Yeah, there's a lot of Jen, that would be great. There's a lot of people in Calgary that miss us, and we miss them. We miss Calgary. My son and I both miss Calgary, and we would like to get back there, but we got a job to do here, and we're gonna be proud Canadians and proud Calgarians, and we're gonna finish what we started here, and we're gonna make Calgary proud, and I think we already have, I hope. And I'm proud of my city and the people that have been supporting our work here and helping us out. So thanks for taking time to even talk to me, Jen, about these things. And I never really looked at it that way, but thanks for saying that, because that's the little bit of nitro in the tank that I needed to get through the next day. So thank you.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for taking your time out with me as well. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Jen.
Cheers.
And hugs to your children and hugs to the big guy.
Will do.